Hi, I'm Jeff Holden. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. Our purpose and passion is to highlight a nonprofit organization in each weekly episode, giving that organization an opportunity to tell their story in their words to better inform and educate the respective communities they serve, as well as provide one more tool for them to share their message to constituents and donors. Our goal is to help build stronger communities through shared voices and to both encourage and support the growth of local nonprofit organizations through podcasting. Thanks to our partners for their support in getting these stories told. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations, and Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. I'm proud to welcome our newest partner to the program, CORE, Interim and Fractional Executive Leadership, Comprehensive Back Office Support Services. We work in it so you can work on it. Visit cxore.com. The Robert and Margaret Mondavi Center is where a world-class artistry meets a purpose-built instrument. From Jackson Hall's 1,801 seats, tuned by a master acoustician and engineered to transform from concert hall to proscenium in hours, to the endlessly flexible and intimate Vanderhoff Studio Theater that can morph into a jazz club if desired. Every detail here serves the performance and the audience. Born of a rare collaboration between architect, theater designer, and acoustic artisan, Mondavi Center has also helped anchor UC Davis's Gateway District. It's a theater that welcomes students, neighbors, and touring greats with the same care, from impeccable sound to a seamless guest experience, so the art can do what it does best: move us. This episode, we celebrate an icon built to inspire, and still setting the standard 25 years later. And to think the executive director representing the theater today has been involved with the theater since its completion is simply amazing. I'm excited to speak with Jeremy Ganter, whose wealth of familiarity and expertise on this prized institution is second to none. Jeremy Ganter, welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Jeremy, you're responsible for one of our region's true performing arts gems. The Mondavi Center is not only recognizable from the freeway as the architectural stature that it places in the visibility as you drive by it, but it's also an incredible facility in itself as a performing arts theater. Before we get into the details of the building and the structure and the process and the arts that take place there, you have a really unique story, and it's one that most people can't tell about their association to the theater that they either manage or work with. Tell us your story, because I think it really defines you and your association to the Mondavi Center.
Sure. And I'll say I've been so lucky in my career throughout and from the very beginning and at UC Davis. And so 2 weeks ago, I turned 51, and I've been at the Mondavi Center almost 25 years, so basally half
your
my
life. And happy belated birthday.
Thank you. And my kids grew up going to performances there. Our first son attended, if I remember correctly, 27 performances in the womb in one of our first seasons, which was great. But so when I was a kid, I lived in San Ramon for about a year and a half. I'm originally from upstate New York, and being in California made a huge impression on me as a kid. It was kind of one of the bright lights of my entire childhood. We unfortunately had to move back to upstate New York, and I always wanted to come back to California. So as soon as I had an opportunity to come back, I did. I convinced my wife to honeymoon out here to try to sell it to her. And then she got a job in Sacramento that kind of came out of the blue for her. And then I followed her out about 3 months later,
Just coincidentally, she got a job from upstate New York in Sacramento as you were trying to suggest it's a place to come to?
Yes, and so this is kind of the beginning of the kismet of it all.
Yes.
We sat down and made this decision. We got married pretty young. We were in our early 20s. We didn't have kids yet. that we would just move out to California and figure it out. 2 days later, she got a phone call from someone she'd met at a conference who said, there is a perfect job for you in Sacramento, California. She flew out, she interviewed, she got the job. She still works for that organization, but she's in a different role now. And so that kind of began our kind of quest to California. I had just finished my music degree, so I changed my kind of educational path. So I finished my music degree in my early 20s. So I arrived in Davis with no job and a music degree, not the easiest thing to have to find employment. And I just started applying any job that opened up at UC Davis Presents, which was the predecessor of the Mondavi Center, I would immediately apply for. At the time, the staff was, I think, 10 people. So there weren't a lot of jobs there, and I just couldn't get my foot in the door. So I decided to temp at the university. I ended up temping with the wife of the executive director of UC Davis Presents, just pure dumb luck.
Boy, the serendipity just continues throughout every step of the way, right?
Yes, yes. And the same thing happened to me. She said, you know what? There's a perfect job for you at UC Davis Presents where my husband works. At the time, it was being his assistant, his executive assistant. So that's how I started as an administrative assistant working in downtown Davis. At the time, of course, the Mondavi Center was about halfway built. It was about a year into construction. And then over the next several decades, worked my way up. My longest job there was being the associate executive director and director of programming for 17 years with Don Roth, my predecessor as executive director. And then when he left, I was lucky enough to earn the job. The way that UC Davis does hiring, there really is no such thing as succession planning. So everybody's got to compete for every job. So I'm proud that I got the job. Did not expect to be there for this long. We expected to maybe move back to New York after a couple of years. But it's been a dream job and a wonderful place to work.
What an incredible tenure you've had to see it from its origin, from day one.
Yes.
Most people can't say that. And to see it in its progression and the novelty to now it's an assumed facility for us. It's just an incredible, incredible story.
Yes, it is. And I think of particularly the venues, and particularly Jackson Hall in the Mondavi Center, I think of them as instruments. They very much are instruments. And watching that instrument actually being built, it was inside during the construction phase, and then watching it be completed and become this kind of Stradivarius style venue it's one of the great joys of my life.
Well, you certainly have validated your position and the conversation we're about to have, which I'm really looking forward to. Tell us about the theater itself as a performing arts theater. What 25 years ago was really progressive. It was the architectural style of it was incredibly contemporary. The interior and all the sound acoustics and everything was put into the theater was state of the art. Tell us about that and where it is today. What it looks like by comparison to, say, some of the other theaters.
I think so. One of the really interesting things about the way the Mondavi Center came into being, which I think reflects kind of how UC Davis operates, the kind of collaborative interdisciplinarity of UC Davis, was they didn't just find a single architect with kind of a grand vision for the building. They actually put a team together. So there was a theatrical designer, there was an acoustic engineer, Ron McKay, and then there was the architect, Stan Bowles. And they had them all work together to kind of each focus on their expertise in each area. And it's not uncommon to have those roles in the construction of a performing arts venue, but the way in which they kind of forced them to collaborate was really fascinating. And I think it made the whole project better than the sum of its parts. So that's one piece. The other piece was a focus on, particularly because we're also the home of the UC Davis Symphony, and the presenting program presents a lot of touring symphonies, was to focus on the acoustics as a very, very top-level concern in designing the Mondavi Center. So it would be a more financially viable space in terms of ticket sales if it had 2,400 or 3,000 seats. The reason it has 1,800 seats is because that was the sweet spot acoustically. And so for lack of a better way to put it, a little bit of financial viability was sacrificed for acoustic excellence, and I'm really glad that that decision was made. And then the acoustics, Jackson Hall, the acoustician I mentioned, Ron McKay, this was his last project. He's a master acoustician, and at the time, a lot of the elements in the building were pretty revolutionary. So the sound shell that we have that moves in and out of the proscenium allows us to go from being a true concert hall to a regular proscenium theater in just a few hours. So we can have, the UC Davis Symphony rehearsing one night, the next day we can have a dance company. It's a massive piece of equipment. It's wonderful to watch it move. And then there's these systems of drapes and reflectors. Everything was thought of to make sure that the acoustic experience could be as good as possible. The interesting thing I'll share with you about that is it actually does make mixing reinforced sound, so using speakers, very challenging because the room is so live, it's so delicate acoustically. We've always had exceptional sound technicians. They really have to understand the building. And when a touring engineer comes in to run sound, we actually have a book that we have to hand them to say, like, this is how you mix sound in this room.
Wow.
It's a very live room. And when you get it right, it's magic. But it is a challenge to mix a sound in a room with that much kind of acoustic vibrancy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the Vanderhoof Studio Theater, named for Larry and Rosalie Vanderhoof. Larry was the chancellor who really was responsible for bringing the Mondavi Center to life. That whole story is another amazing story. And was originally meant to be a rehearsal space, but there was a sort of aha moment in the design phase where they said, this could also be a theater. So Ron also treated that room acoustically. So it has some acoustic bells and whistles to allow it to work as a chamber music venue as well. So it is technically a black box, but it's not your typical black box.
And by black box means a smaller
Yep.
performance theater. How many seats are in there?
It ranges, so that's the beautiful thing about it. So it's a 3,000 square foot room, and you could do anything from one seat to almost 300 seats.
Okay.
So it's totally flexible. There is a seating riser that comes out from the wall, but we've done a couple really interesting projects in there where we turned it into a pub. So you can do whatever you want, which is part of the magic of that room. It's actually, as director of programming and also as executive director, where I remain very involved in programming, it's my favorite space to program because you can do anything in there.
And I recall you saying that this is really an interesting space for emerging artists
Yes.
to play.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I'll use jazz as an example. Jazz is something that is really central to what we do, and it's also a passion of mine. So we designed a true jazz club in this space, in the Vanderhoof Studio Theater. So you can imagine a stage on one end, low four-top tables, a bar available, and that allows us to bring artists in for multi-night runs, 3 to 4 night runs, and really sit down and spend time with the audience, explore their own music. And we tend to focus on up-and-coming jazz artists in that space with the idea that we will support their career long-term, and eventually they'll end up in Jackson Hall, in the big space, in the big room, so to speak.
Has that happened yet?
It's happened a number of times. The interesting one, I think we talked about this, is there's actually a reverse happening this year. So a couple years ago, I went to the jazz festival that the Jazz Lincoln Center puts on in New York in January, and saw this Cameroonian-American young singer, Ikep Nkwele, and was just absolutely blown away. And so we have to figure out a way to get Ikep into the studio theater. And then the person that we work with to book the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra said she's coming out on tour with the band. So last year we had her in a holiday show with Jazz at Lincoln Center featured doing holiday music. This year we're bringing her back in the club with her own band as a band leader.
How neat that'll be for the people who are going to get to experience it in the smaller venue.
Yeah, it's great.
Wow.
And I love, one of the things I love about that room is the kind of vibe of the room changes every night. So we currently do Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and just depending on who's coming on a given night, it can be a very different energy in the room. And the artists, because they're so close to the audience, will respond depending on how the audience is acting in a given moment. It's really fascinating to watch, especially if you can, you have the privilege, as I do, to sometimes see all 3 nights in a row.
You mentioned that since the origin of the theater, it has really transformed that into the campus to where it's now a gateway neighborhood is the language you used on it. What is that? What do you mean by that? What has it done?
So that officially is now the Gateway District of UC Davis, and the campus planner, whose name happens to be Bob Seeger, but different Bob Seeger, who's since retired, wonderful man. He had this very grand vision for that corner of campus. So when the Mondavi Center was built, it was basically fields and the Alumni and Visitor Center, which is right across the street from us, and it wasn't really an activated part of the campus or the campus life. And he had this vision, how he used to put it was the university coming out from behind the trees. And that was kind of his vision for the Gateway District, and the Mondavi Center was the first major piece of it. And now what you have there are a lot of the very public-facing elements of the university. So you've got the wonderful Minetti Shrem Museum. Our Graduate School of Management is there. There's a hotel there. The Alumni Visitor Center it remains there. There's a welcome center for prospective students, and then the Robert Mondavi Institute for Wine and Food Science, and there's even a vineyard right there in the neighborhood. So it's become this really cool place with a lot of activity where it used to just be kind of a field. People would come for performances and then they would leave, and that would be it.
Well, now there's a reason to stay, and not only stay, but spend the night and
Yes.
really take in the surrounding environment.
Yes, and we have a handful of patrons that live kind of farther away, maybe up in the foothills, that will come down and stay the night. They'll see a performance, they'll stay the night, and then head back in the morning.
And that's actually a good question to pose, too. Where do the majority geographically come from that experience activity at the...
It depends. It depends on what we're presenting on a given night, but around half of our audience comes from Davis, and then the other half comes from the greater Sacramento region, and we serve 11 different counties, or we have audience coming from 11 different counties. And occasionally, if we're doing something that's not playing the Bay Area, we'll even draw from San Francisco and the Bay Area. But for example, when we do orchestras, it's probably 60-40 in favor of Davis, in part because the wonderful Sacramento Philharmonic is here for Sacramentans. For other things, it'll flip. It'll be 60 or 70% coming from outside of Davis and the rest coming from inside.
As the lights come up and the audience breaks, it's the perfect time to recognize the sponsors making this performance possible. I'm speaking with Darrell Teat, CEO of CORE. Welcome to our family of partners.
Thank you so much, Jeff. We are really excited to be part of the family and contribute to the work that you all are doing.
What is CORE all about?
CORE provides fractional and interim executive services, along with comprehensive back-office solutions that go into our client sites and do the work to give them the capacity they need in order to move through transitions, whether that's planned or unplanned. Or companies also work with our accounting and finance, back-office solutions, human resources, technology, and administration.
Why are these services such a lifesaver for small and mid-sized organizations?
Great question, Jeff. The reason why our back office solutions add value is because we save them time and money, anywhere from 20 to 30% of what they would spend on that back office solution. We work in it so they can actually work on it.
I have to believe that there's somebody right now listening and thinking, I could use that kind of help. What's the best way to get in touch with you, Darrell?
The best way is at our website, cxore.com, and contact me directly at dteat@cxore.com.
Darrell, thank you for your investment and commitment to supporting our messaging. And if you're interested in learning more about how CORE may help your organization, visit cxore.com.
Hello, this is Scott Thomas with Cap Trust in our Sacramento office. I specialize in working with local nonprofits and associations. Annually, we survey private and public nonprofit organizations across the country to better understand challenges they see in today's environment. In our more recent survey, we heard concerns about proper board governance, mission-aligned investment, and how to implement alternative investments. If you would like a copy of the survey or to discuss your organization, look me up, Scott Thomas at captrust.com.
I'm thrilled to have Western Health Advantage partnering with us as they do so much to support so many nonprofit agencies in our community. As a truly local health plan, you'll find individual and family options, employer options, plans for CalPERS and Medicare Advantage. From medical services to pharmacy, health and wellness support, as well as behavioral health care, Western Health Advantage has a plan that fits what you need. As an employer, for profit or nonprofit business, individual or family, you can find more at westernhealth.com. And UC Davis is a Hispanic-serving institution, so it's an HSI. We talked a little bit about this, and I thought it was significant enough to bring it up on how that has influenced activity at the theater as well.
Yeah, sure. So, one of the things that I love about doing this work on a major research university is that we can program to what the university is doing, and it creates all kinds of interesting opportunities and synergies. And so when we learned quite a few years ago that the university was going to take a shot at becoming an HSI, we thought it was important to program more Hispanic artists, more Latinx artists in our programming. So we significantly increased that representation in our programming, not really as a way to get the HSI designation, but to acknowledge the fact that the major metric of an HSI is that 25% of your undergraduates are, in the federal term, Hispanic, which is wonderful. And obviously UC Davis has achieved that percentage. So we not only want to be presenting this kind of work to the greater community, we also want to be responsive to what our student body looks like.
As you look at the activity that takes place at the theater, how often is it in use? How many day performances are going on? Is there any downtime? And you've got the multiple rooms. What does that look like, and who uses it? It's not always commercial, correct?
Correct. So it's an extraordinarily busy space during the academic year. So we start usually right around the end of September, and we go all the way through June. The summer is, in terms of activity, public activity is basically quiet. We close the building for the summer. That's when we're refinishing the stage, cleaning up the lights, doing all that kind of work that you need to do. And a number of our stage technicians go out on the road on summer tours and things. During the academic year, during our season, the Mondavi Center is busy almost every day of the week, 7 days a week, from the morning until often 11 or 12 at night. It's an incredibly busy space. There's the way that the use of the Mondavi Center is broken up is basically into thirds. So the presenting program, the public touring presentations for which the Mondavi Center, I think in the community is most known, is about a third of the activity in the center. Another third is just general use by campus for various events. We do orientations for undergrads, we do commencements, all kinds of university events. And then the other third is one of my favorite things that happened to us of all time is that we are used as a classroom space. So Jackson Hall, this beautiful concert hall, is used 5 days a week as a classroom space. And that means that thousands of UC Davis students are coming through our doors. We can advertise them to them. We can show them that we're not just a stodgy classical music institution. And I think most of all, we can show them that we're not 50 miles from their dorms or wherever they live, that we're actually pretty easy to get to.
And not to mention, there's no excuse for not hearing that professor, because we know that the acoustics in that room are as good as they could possibly be from any classroom on campus.
Yes, yeah, and the professors like it because they get a stagehand and an audio engineer to work with them to make their class, really vibrant.
Yeah.
The screen over the stage is massive, so that if the faculty are using slides, which most of them do, it's very beautiful to look at. It's a great experience. I think the only downside for the students is there are no desks, so they're kind of have to put things in their lap. We give them these little boards to put stuff on. That's the only downside, but I think the upside far outweighs that.
Teaching as a theatrical performance.
Yes, yeah. And the cool thing is these are not, by and large, they're not arts-related courses. They're mostly hard sciences, the kind of lecture courses that have 600 to 800 registration, which is why they use Jackson Hall, because there isn't a classroom that big on campus. So we've got a whole different kind of energy and a different kind of student than we might see if we just did arts programming.
Well, it's certainly clear to say that the theater is put to good use. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about the interaction in the community itself. So Davis, nonprofits, how do you work with things outside of performing arts and the university itself?
So I think one of the programs that we have that was started a few years ago for the community, it's literally called Community Connections. It's a ticket program that allows for an organization. These can be on-campus student organizations, or these can be community groups, and they're very often community groups They have to apply and they have to be accepted. They just have to fill out a very basic application.
Mhm.
And once they're accepted, we offer them free tickets to come as a group to performances during the Mondavi Center season. And there's a couple metrics that they have to hit. They have to have a 90% attendance rate. They have to give us a little bit of feedback, but we also give them a shout out from stage. We put them on the pre-show slides. And it's a way for groups, A, to come together, but also B, for groups that may not be able to afford that many tickets or some of our higher ticket prices to come for free to the Mondavi Center, which is it's a great program. I really love it.
Yeah, and what an asset for the community to expose people to the theater too that maybe would never get the opportunity to do so.
Yes, yeah. Another piece that we have is our school matinee program. So we have in fact, there's one tomorrow. It's a bus-in program. So 11 o'clock on weekday mornings, about 6 to 8 times a year, we'll do a presentation in Jackson Hall, and schools will come in. They do have to pay, but the ticket prices are pretty low. Come in and get to see a performance with their classmates, with their classes. We usually sell out those, so you can imagine 1,801, generally kind of 4th to 8th graders in a performance. The energy is amazing. My favorite moment every time is when the lights go down. They just lose their minds. Like, the kids go crazy. They clap, they shout, they cheer. It's wonderful. I absolutely love it.
And that's before they even know what's going on.
Yeah.
It's just the experience of that. Wow.
Yeah. Yep. And it reaches me very deeply, because when I was at this crossroads of deciding where I was going to go with my career, I talked to somebody who had worked at a performing arts institution, and she said, "Let me just tell you this. When the curtain goes up, there's something about it that's unlike anything else. And that energy is why you should do this path." And that meant a lot to me. I took that very seriously. We don't really have a curtain that goes up anymore. That's kind of archaic, but it's now kind of when the lights go down.
Very cool. And I love that you shared how that is a visceral, emotional piece of why you do what you do.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a good segue coming off of ticket prices and things like that to get into the funding.
Mm-hmm.
You're roughly an $8 to $9 million organization.
Yep.
How many people do you employ?
So currently our total employee number is 140, and that's 37 full-time career employees, 14 part-time employees. Those are mostly stagehands, and then 89 part-time students, which is again, having that many students engaged with us in employment is wonderful. And the students work all around the organization. They work on stage, they work in programming, administration, ticket office, ushers, everything.
But I love the engagement of actually using it for the students themselves in employment. These are paid positions.
Yes, yeah.
Excellent.
It's funny, many years ago, we did a survey of students that basically the survey question was, what do you want for the Mondavi Center? And the number one answer was a job. After that was the arts, performances, that kind of stuff, which was really interesting.
Which feeds in well if you get both, because
Yeah.
you get paid to do something you love to do.
Yeah, and they can attend performances, and it's great.
Fantastic. The thing that many people tend to assume is that ticket prices fund the operation, and nothing could be further from the truth, quite honestly. How do you manage that process of funding outside of what you get from a ticket versus everything else that has to take place?
So in broad strokes, it's our income streams are ticket sales, which I can break that down a little bit. Fundraising, which is a huge piece of what we do, and then support from the university. And the support from the university is really in support of the building itself, not the programming. We try to make sure that the program itself actually at least breaks even or comes close. And so let's just say it's $9 million for a round number. Of that, about $2 million or so is the presenting program. That's the expense of the presenting program. So we bring in about $2 million in ticket sales. That leaves another $7 million that we have to cover to operate the building. And so that is done through all of those other funding mechanisms. We also have funding for programming to fund those things that we have a fund for programming to fund those things that are really not going to break even, but they're worth doing artistically, and they're kind of beyond our ability to bring in revenue. But yeah, I think there is a misperception out there for all kind of nonprofit performing arts organizations that ticket sales cover costs, and they don't even come close. They're usually kind of across the nation, industry wide. It's usually ranges between 20 and 40% of your budget is covered by ticket sales.
In the community and in the presence of what you've got, because you're Davis, Sacramento, maybe a 30-mile radius, give or take, do you see the majority of funding coming from any one particular area, or is it pretty well dispersed?
It's in terms of individual donors that, or just
In
fundraising.
general, yeah, just general.
I mean, so as I say, we receive a significant amount of funding from the university to support the building, and then the rest of it is basically coming from individual donors, and there is a good mix between Davis people and Sacramento people. I mean, our single largest donor is Nancy Fisher, who's a Sacramentan. She sponsors our entire season and has for several years, which is amazing. But it's pretty well dispersed across the entire region.
What have you seen over the course of the 25 years that maybe you would say is just most dramatic in change from where it was then to where it is today?
I think this is a little boring, but it's probably the most dramatic change that we've seen. And this change, which is later buying behavior, was already underway as we were headed into the pandemic. We were seeing, when I started working at the Mondavi Center, so-called fixed subscriptions were the thing for every organization, where you would say, here's your 4 things that we've picked for you. You're an orchestra subscriber. These are your 4 orchestras. You subscribe, you get a particular seat. And that was a way to bring in a ton of revenue, basically in the spring or summer before the season began. That kind of subscription no longer exists. And what we're finding is that, so prior to the pandemic, we could go into a season with 75 to 85% of our total ticket sales sold for the year for our goal. We now this year we went in at about 50%. So we're daily now we have to work harder and harder throughout the season, or at least longer through the season, to continue to bring in ticket sales. But what we're finding is people are still buying tickets. They're just buying them much later. And
you're not the first person to have said that. Every theater we've spoken with, everybody in this month long of performing arts theater, same situation.
Yeah.
It's delayed. It gets there, but it doesn't keep hair on your head or color dark.
Yes.
You want to look at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
It's just a hand-wringing, are we going to make it? Are we going to make it? And sure enough, it always comes through, but it seems to have just pushed further and further out.
Yeah, and I'll say on the flip side, we just a few weeks ago announced Malala as a speaker who's going to participate in a chancellor's colloquium, and it sold out in one day. So it can happen, although that is still short term because she's coming in mid-November.
Okay, yeah, that is short term.
Yeah.
So it's a quick term, 6 weeks maybe?
Yeah.
We see it everywhere, even concerts, everything. You hear everybody complaining about it. We just don't know until we know.
Yeah.
And it's a frustration across the board.
And I would also say the other thing, this is not as dramatic, but it really matters to kind of the mission of the organization. Another thing that has happened, I think, started to happen after the Great Recession, was definitely accelerated during COVID, is that tours have become much tighter. So the artists are having, there's fewer days off between performances to try to control costs. What that means for an organization like ours is that, we were often, before this started happening, we were able to bring artists in and have them for a few days, have them do work on campus. We still do that work, but artists are generally less available for it because they're often, in the past where they might have been with us for 2 or 3 days, they're only with us for a day.
And then they're moving on to the next gig.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, actually.
Yeah, the 3-night runs in the Vanderhoof Studio Theater that I mentioned, that's where we get a lot of our residency because we've got them for a week.
Mm-hmm. If a donor were to come to you and say, Jeremy, I've got a blank check for you. If I like your idea, I'm a supporter of the arts, I'm very intrigued with what's happening as we look at the future, what would you say? What would you do with an unlimited budget?
I do several things, but I would broadly put them into 2 buckets: artistic and the building itself, the venue. Artistic, I would, this Artistic Ventures Fund that I mentioned, which is that fund that allows us to reach beyond what we might otherwise be able to do just through ticket sales and kind of the normal course of our budget. Would love to have unlimited funds in that because it would be transformative for the kind of artists we can access. So I think we do a wonderful job of accessing great artists. but there are some that are just way beyond our reach financially. It would also potentially allow us to bring ticket prices down, which is great. We're very deliberate about our pricing. We try to make sure that there's always a really good low entry point. But the reality is we have to break even, so that the prices do have to reflect the cost of bringing the artists in. I would also, on the artistic side, what really costs a lot of money is doing deep, intensive residencies with artists, having them come for a week or a month or a whole year. It's incredibly expensive, and it's totally beyond our means right now to be able to do that. It always has been, frankly. So that would be wonderful to kind of really deepen those relationships with artists. And then the other piece of it is the building. And I think that's a thing that it's not super sexy to raise money for a building, but I think for me, if I may say so, maybe more than anybody, because of my history with the Mondavi Center, I care deeply about the venue, and I want to make sure that it is in state-of-the-art condition forever. And so currently our biggest fundraising priority, other than artistic, is the building itself. The reality is it's approaching 25 years old, and we're getting to that point. Although it's been incredibly well maintained and our theatrical technology is state-of-the-art, we're getting to that point where big things are going to need to be replaced, things like the roof. And then the last thing is a restaurant. What we don't really have is, when you go to a venue that has a restaurant, there's a whole different energy when people come prior to the performance and they have a meal, or they hang out afterwards and have a coffee and are able to talk about what they saw. That was the dream of my predecessor, Don Roth. And we looked into it, but we couldn't figure out a way to do it. We couldn't figure out a way to afford to do it. But to have a restaurant would be really quite amazing.
It would seem, with the restaurateurs that we have in the region, with Michelin-starred restaurants and Terra Madre and Farm to Fork, somebody should be able to figure that out for you with that gateway neighborhood and put a really high-end, beautiful restaurant there.
Yes.
And I'm saying this because somebody's going to hear it.
Yes.
And maybe they'll go, we should go talk to so-and-so. And we certainly have the capacity in terms of skill set and quality of food, and just the influence from Napa, which is just minutes away, to Sacramento and all of Davis.
Yeah. And it really, that would be the thing that would be sort of the linchpin on the dream that is the Gateway District. So the dream was food, wine, and the arts. That's what the Robert Mondavi Institute has, the food and wine piece covered. Minetti Shrem has visual art, and we have performing arts covered. But that kind of congregation space for a meal is just not really there.
Well, for the many people who are listening who are donors and contributors to the theater, we know that they all dine at the very restaurants that are going through our heads right now, and we know who those owners and principals are. We're going to suggest that when you go and dine at one of those restaurants, you bring this topic up, and at some point it manifests itself at the theater.
Idea, yeah.
Okay, good. And in 2 years, you and I will talk, and we'll go, hey, we have so-and-so opening up.
Yep.
Back to reality in terms of the funding of the organization. What is the greatest need today?
The greatest need is capital improvements on the building. And again, I always hasten to say the building is not falling apart. It's in really good shape. But we have about $10 million of need, ranging from several $1 million of critical need, always down to things that are nice to have, like building or a second rehearsal space. But again, it is just the reflection that we're approaching 25 years old. Our seats are still in great shape, but they're the original seats. Our carpet needs to be replaced. The roof needs to be replaced. And so that is our greatest need. And the thing that I want to attend to as part of my own legacy as the executive director. And then I also always hasten to say, beyond that, equally greatest need is the art itself, is funding for the work that we do, so we can do deeper, better, more work.
And to emphasize, this building gets used a lot, and it is in phenomenal condition. The maintenance that has been done on it has been incredible, because you wouldn't recognize it as a first or second time attendee coming in after years and going, well, it looks as I recall it from the beginning.
Yes.
It is amazing what you've done in terms of the capability to keep it in that kind of condition. So it's not unusual in 25 years that stuff just starts to happen that needs to get replaced.
Yes. Yeah. And it's, I would say in terms of just the cleanliness of the building, it's like the painting of the Golden Gate Bridge. Because we're so busy every day, the people who take care of the cleaning of the facility, they kind of start in the back, work their way to the front, and just keep going back and forth every day because of how busy we are.
Disneyland.
Yeah.
You get the little sweepers rolling right behind you as you're going. You never know that you dropped a piece of popcorn. What is the thing that you do, Jeremy Ganter? Most people say, well, and when I relax, I go to theater, or I go to a movie, or I go for some entertainment, or I go to a concert. You live in that space all day long. And we started asking this question of our executive directors for these nonprofit organizations, of which you are, and you carry a burden. And sometimes it's hard to let it go because you live in that space. You eat, breathe, and sleep it. But for most, they can go out to some semblance of entertainment. You are entertainment all day long with your family, and your kids have even grown up, as you were saying. What do you do to get away?
Nothing sometimes.
Which is a good thing, right?
I don't, I always joke, but it's not really a joke because it's true. During the 9 months of our season, I almost never see a movie in a movie theater because I just can't. I don't want to do that when I'm not.
I don't need to see people in seats. Yeah. I see that all day long.
I do it in the summer, and I also, I travel a lot to scout artists as well. So in addition to being in our own venue, I'm out traveling all over in other people's venues. So I'm getting that sort of experience as a kind of civilian audience member anyway. So I tend I'm by nature an introvert. So I also am one of those people who needs time to go home and recharge and be quiet. So that's often what I do, cycling, exercise, hiking, and most of all, spending time with my family, who during the season I don't get to see as much as I would like.
Sure. I would never have guessed introvert.
It's a switch I've learned to flip in the 20-plus years that I've been working. And then the other thing, people always ask me, kind of like, what do you listen to when you're driving? What kind of music do you listen to?
I was just going to ask you.
And I do have this kind of running playlist that the programming team uses, and I also have my own music that I like to listen to. As I mentioned, I'm a huge fan of jazz, but generally I don't listen to music because I also listen to music all day at work in my office. So I'm also usually listening to podcasts or something else other than music just to give my brain a break.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, now they know.
Yeah.
What's the best way to find out what's happening at the theater, learn a little bit more about it, and get engaged?
The easiest way at the top level is our website, I think, and to follow us on social media. And it's important because one of the other things that's changed over the years is we add shows as we go. That wasn't always the case. We used to just launch this kind of monolith of a season, and that was it. We now add several performances every quarter. So to be able to stay on top of what's being added, our website, being subscribed to our social media is a great way to do it. And it's also important because some of the more kind of popular rock and roll shows are often the ones that are added because those tend to book on shorter timelines than, say, an orchestra. So if classical music or jazz or modern dance is not your thing, you might get your thing through the Just Addeds that we add as we move through the season.
Website URL?
www.mondaviarts.org.
Okay, so mondaviarts.org. Yep. We will put that in the show notes, too, so everybody knows they can just click on it if they're listening on.
Great. And the other thing I was going to say, too, is one of the mottos of the Mondavi Center is go see a show. I mean, I think that's the main thing is go see a show. And what we know is when people attend 3 performances, you often you can get them hooked at that point on live performance. But to actually come to the Mondavi Center, dispel any myths or misperceptions that you might have about what our audience is like, because we have 9 or 10 different audiences. We're doing different programming every night. Just come try it out, I think is what I always tell people. And I'm pretty sure you won't be disappointed.
Well, it's a high bar of comparison, too, because once you've been there, you're spoiled.
Yes.
And not every acoustic setting is going to be the same in any other theater.
Yeah. And also, I think, we have an organizational philosophy that you can book the greatest artists in the world and they can give the greatest performance in the Mondavi Center of all time. And if it takes you 45 minutes to get out of the parking garage, that degrades the possibility that you'll come back, but it also or if the bathrooms aren't clean, or if our staff are not warm and friendly to you, it lowers the chance that you're going to have that kind of rare transformational experience because you're going to be less open to it. So we really put the whole organization on task around kind of the holistic experience of welcoming and being at the Mondavi Center and creating a sense of belonging. It's not just about what goes on stage.
I'm glad you said that too, because the experience of the event isn't just the event itself, it's everything around it. And if that becomes a challenge or a burden, either egress or ingress, whatever it happens to be, if you have this wonderful experience and the last thing you remember is the horrific exit because it took an hour and a half to get out of wherever you were, I'm not doing it again.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it.
Yep. And I'll say candidly, we're seeing that with the current traffic with the construction on the causeway. We've had a few people that said, I'm just not doing it anymore. And I'm going to wait until the construction's done. So it all matters. We think of the experience from the moment you buy a ticket to the moment you return home after the performance. We think about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's impressive because I don't know that everybody does sometimes when you experience it. You're like, what were they thinking? This doesn't make sense. Well, Jeremy, we have something in common. I've been around since the theater was open and I attended the grand opening. But I can't say I've been there anywhere near as much as you have or hung out with the other 1,800 or 1,799 people or 98
1801.
1801, there we go. So what would that be? 1799 if I brought my wife, right?
Yep.
But I just recall the enthusiasm and excitement for it when it opened. And when I hear people speak about it, that enthusiasm and excitement and pride of the theater is still there. And every time I drive by it, coming home from the Bay Area or going to, I see that building and it's iconic and it's contemporary. And at the time, 25 years ago, that was one of the hippest buildings we had that had any visibility. And today, I think it still manifests that same look of this is a contemporary space. There's something unique about the space, and you've been with it for the entire time. So congratulations. Thank you for what you do, what your team brings to our region, and we appreciate everything that the Mondavi Center represents.
Thank you. Thanks so much, and thanks for having me. Thanks for thinking of us for your podcast. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Thank you for listening to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If what you heard moved you, please reach out to that organization and do what you can to help. If you like and appreciate what we're doing to support local nonprofits, please give us a positive review, subscribe, and share. If you're a nonprofit with an interest in participating in an episode, you can reach me at jeff@hearmenowstudio.com. Once again, we're grateful for the businesses who have made this program possible. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations. You can find them in Sacramento, Roseville, and Folsom, captrust.com. And Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families, westernhealth.com.